Okay, this is for number 16. Solve the absolute value equation. I put this problem up here twice because I'm going to solve it a couple different ways. I know that some of the teachers solve it one way, some of the teachers solve it another way. So, first one on the left here. First step is to get the absolute value by itself. We can do that by subtracting 3 on both sides. I cannot combine this 3 plus 2 to become 5 because it kind of goes against the order of operations of simplifying an expression. So the best thing to do there is to subtract 3 because I have a positive 3 in the front. Subtracting 3 gives me a 0. So all I have left on the left-hand side is a 2 times the absolute value, 4x minus 2, and then that equals 15 minus 3, which is 12. I also don't want to distribute a 2 because I have an absolute value function, not a set of parentheses. So I'm going to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is the number 1. So now I just have the absolute value, 4x minus 2, and that absolute value is equal to 6. On a little side note, I know that if I have absolute value bars and the result is 6, there are 2 possibilities of what could be inside. There could be a 6 inside, or there could be a negative 6 inside. Those are the only 2 options. So because of that, I'm going to set up a new equation where I set it equal to 6 and equal to negative 6. And I take what's on the inside, 4x minus 2, and I solve both of those equations. That's my third step, or my, I guess, second step, I don't know. And then I solve both of those. So if I add 2, I get 4x equals 8. Plus 2 cancels out there. Plus 2 gives me the 8. Divide by 4, and x is equal to 2. My second equation, if I add 2, that cancels out on the right. Add 2 gives me 4x equals negative 4. Divide by 4, and x equals negative 1. So you'll see that sometimes on the worksheets you'll see like bracket notation, which just is a way to show your solution set. So x equals negative 1 and x equals 2. Another way that one of the teachers was showing doing it is that you can take the problem and think about all the order of operations that are taking place. And we start with the 4 value, or the x, wherever the x is, and we work our way out from order of operations. So if we wrote down a list of what's happening in this problem, we're taking x and we're multiplying by 4. After we multiply by 4, it looks like we are subtracting 2. Then we have the absolute value. The absolute value is a function, so we're taking the absolute value of whatever that number is. This is just the second way that you could process this. I know Mr. Papulus teaches this in his class. After we take the absolute value of it, we have another 2 on the outside. That means we're multiplying by 2 again. And then the very last thing that was done to the left-hand side of the equation is to add 3. When that's all said and done, you get the answer 15, as shown on the right-hand side. So those are all the steps that are being done. I can find the value of x, which is highlighted, by doing all of those steps backwards. If I take 15 and I subtract 3 to do the opposite of this one, the last step, I'm going to get 12. 15 minus 3 is 12. If I then, instead of multiplying by 2, I decide to divide by 2, I get 6. This next one, we kind of undo the absolute value. We know that an absolute value makes it a positive 6. So to undo it is going to turn it into a 6 and a negative 6. The second to last step going up the list says subtract 2, so we're going to add 2. So 6 becomes 8, negative 6 becomes negative 4. And the very last step that was given in the problem was to multiply by 4. That was the very first step we did, so we're going to do the opposite, which is divide by 4. So 8 divided by 4 gives me a 2, running out of space to write that. 8 divided by 4 gives me 2. And negative 4 divided by 4 gives me a 1. And that is also a way to do it. You basically wrote down every step that was being done in order, and then you solved it by undoing every step. If you want to, you could take a time and you could see that we did all the exact same steps in the problem. On the first time we did the problem, I'm going to start circling some stuff in purple. The first thing I did right here is I subtracted 3 on both sides of the problem. That was the first thing I did in pink over here, subtract 3. The second thing I did on both sides of the problem, I divided by 2 the first time I did it, and then my divide by 2 is written down there as well. After I had the absolute value by itself, the first time I did the problem, I had to come up with this 6 and negative 6. That was the third thing that was done over here. When we undid the absolute value, just circled that, we got 6 and negative 6. So I could keep going, but all the steps are actually done in the same way on both problems. It's just how you want to organize it. So there you go.